Hey, it's Bob back out here at Serenity Hill. Try to get this situated. It's a glorious day. Haven't had, got a little bit of rain yesterday. Back in the background there, you can see my laundry shed. I've got the cladding on it. Today, I will be putting electrical in it. And I'll post some later as I get that done. I may bore you with showing a little time lapse of me putting some wiring in it. Then, fortunately, the driveway is drying up some. I have managed, if you can see back behind me there, I've got some foliage, some trees down. I've got to drag those out and add those to the brush pile, making room for our storage garage. It's a beautiful day out here. Going to try to make the most of it and get the wiring done in the laundry shed, get this brush dragged out. Hopefully at some point during the day, the guy with the septic, who's going to be putting our septic in, will be bringing in a load of gravel. We're scheduled to have that done on Saturday. It'll be nice to get that done. Deb's going to be out here with me tomorrow. We're going to put the siding on the laundry shed, put the window in, get the doors made. It's going to be a busy day tomorrow. Busy day today. I haven't gotten a call yet on going back to work, so I don't know if I'll be going back to work on Monday or not. They probably won't let me know until tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon. But anyways, I'm trying to get as much done as I can out here. You might be able to hear the birds in the background. We're going to be getting the RV out here. We get the septic in Saturday. We'll get the RV moved out here Sunday, so that's out of the driveway there in town. And hopefully within the next week or so, we'll get our storage garage and we'll be able to start moving stuff out here. And we may just actually make that end of May transition from living in town to living out here on our property happen. And in May, instead of seeing just concrete piers, I'll finally get to the point of putting some timbers up on them. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to use a lot of the logs that I was hoping to use for my timber frame. I'll end up going with some 6x6 southern yellow pine. Looks like probably for the frame. May have enough good logs that I can split them in half and use the 6x6 on the inside and use my half a log on the outside, and then join them together with some 2x6s to make kind of an H-type structure. I'll see how that works out. I won't know until I get to work on some more of these logs over the next couple weeks how many of them I'll be able to use. So we're just kind of having to go with the flow and figure things out as we go along. Okay, so at this point is where you'll notice I'm in a different shirt than in the beginning and the end of this video. That's where I'll have to admit that I did a really, really rookie thing. You know, when you open up the camera on the iPhone, it automatically defaults to camera. So when you decide you're going to do a video, and it was a really good video, very informative and instructional, but when you decide, I'm going to do a video, but you don't make sure it's on video first, then what you do, what you find out when you go to edit, is you've got a real nice picture of when you started talking and a somewhat nice picture of when you finished talking, but nothing in between. It's all gone. So that being said, I'll start off all over again. Maybe I'll remember and maybe I won't. It's a little bit darker in here right now because we did manage to get the cladding on. I'll take a picture of that in a little bit. But what I wanted to talk to you about a little was the electrical. Now, I didn't do show me actually working on it because I'm trying to make it family friendly and not have any bad words in there. I have a bad habit of, when I make a mistake, of telling myself how stupid I am. It's something I'm going to have to quit doing, especially when we get our great-grandsons out here. But, you know, electrical intimidates a lot of people, and for good reason. If you don't do your electrical correctly, you can have a lot of issues. You may burn things up. You may have the improper voltage. You may have too much voltage. If you too high a voltage, too low a voltage, you may not have good connections. I learned a lot about electrical from an electrical engineer that I worked with down in Texas. He was a licensed electrician, in addition to being an Aggie electrical engineer. And he taught me a lot of things. And I had another electrical engineer that had been a licensed electrician before he decided, you know, electricians work a lot harder than the engineers do. So I think I'll go to school and become an engineer. Then I won't have to work as hard as being an electrician. He decided he didn't like pulling that heavy wire. So those guys taught me a lot about electrical. And one of the guys that used to work for me up here where we are now had a electrical contracting business and has kept his license current. So I've been able to learn a lot of things about the proper way to do electrical. This is not a how-to video. I'm not going to pretend to instruct someone else. I'm just going to try to do it correctly myself. Now, there's a few little things that I wanted to point out here. One is, hopefully Chuck Warrington would be happy with this. I hate going into an electrical box and seeing a bunch of spaghetti. Pardon me, I just stepped on something. I hate going into an electrical box and seeing a bunch of spaghetti where everything is just snaked around, whatever, and you can't see anything. I like to keep it neat and tidy. You notice, try to make bends on the wiring where it goes into the breakers. And you'll also notice, I don't know if you can see real close or not, but I do not have power to this panel yet, or I would not be sticking my hand in here. On each of these terminals, you should be able to see a little bit of insulation, or see a little bit of copper. The reason you do that is if there's a little bit of copper showing before the insulation, it's real easy for you and an inspector to see that you don't have insulation trapped under the wires. Because if you put insulation under your wiring connection, you're not going to get a good connection. You could end up having intermittent issues, and you also create some hot spots. Now, like I said, electrical's not that difficult. It requires attention to detail, requires some basic knowledge. I would really encourage anybody who's homesteading to, if you don't feel comfortable doing electrical and you don't feel comfortable hiring it out all the time, go to your local community college. Most community colleges are going to have some basic electrical courses and even some wiring courses, things like that would help you learn how to do electrical and to do it safely. You can save yourself a lot of time and a lot of frustration. And you really have to be careful when you're doing electrical. You have to pay attention to detail. Make sure that you have good connections. Make sure you're using the proper rated wiring. I'm using 20 amp breakers here, and I'm using a 12-2 wire with the ground. Number 12 wire is suitable up to 30 amps. You always want to have your wire rated higher than your disconnect in your breaker. Believe it or not, one of the purposes of the breaker is to protect your wiring. So if you get a short, instead of this wiring getting so hot that it causes a fire, your breaker's going to trip. It's going to protect your wiring from getting hot. It's going to protect your building from fires, and it's going to keep someone from getting electrocuted. Again, it's not rocket science. It's just attention to detail. If you don't know what you're doing, keep in mind this one thing. Electricity can kill you, and it will hurt the whole time. So be careful. If you're not sure what you're doing, talk to somebody who does know, or pay to have it done. Or what I would even suggest, go take a class, go learn about it. Then you can become more self-sufficient because you'll know the correct way to do it and the correct wiring to use, the correct breakers to use, and the correct techniques to use to make sure that you're safe, your house is safe, your building is safe, your family's safe. And here's one last little tip for you. When you're pulling wire into one of your boxes, leave it long. You can always cut it off. I know it's a waste of wire, and wire isn't cheap. But if you get your wire too short, you're going to be tempted to splice onto it. And it can be done if you're using a junction box and you're doing it correctly. But too often what people do is they go, oh, I'm a little bit short. They cut another piece of wire, slap on a couple wire nuts, maybe wrap some electrical tape, and you've got a potentially lethal condition there, because wherever you've got those wires tied together, they could come apart. You could have a bad connection, you get a hot spot, and that's where you're going to get a fire. So the best thing is, if you end up a little short on your wire, don't splice it unless you're using a junction box. And preferably don't splice it at all. Just pull another piece of wire and make sure it's long enough. But I don't know, I left anywhere from 6 to 12 inches hanging out of all these boxes. I'd much rather cut a few inches of wire off than end up with not enough wire, because I can always cut it off, but I can't stretch it.